Margaret Johnson is the creative powerhouse behind Goodby, Silverstein and Partners. As GSMP's first Chief Creative Officer, she's been recognized by Business Insider, Forbes, Ad Age, and Fast Company as one of the most influential creative leaders in the world. Margaret is redefining the future of advertising, and we are talking to her all about it, only on Taking Stock.
I talk a lot about firsts at the agency, doing things that have never been done before. And I think that's one of the most exciting things that we can do in advertising, that feeling of kind of jumping into the darkness and not knowing exactly what's going to happen is exciting and so fulfilling when it actually, works out really well.
As GSMP's very first Chief Creative Officer, you've been recognized as one of the industry's top leaders. Talk to me about how you feel knowing that you make such an impact on this whole sector.
I like to come into every assignment with a beginner's mindset. So not assuming that I know the answer to anything. I like to keep our creative department really varied. So we have a lot of people that we recruit that aren't just from a traditional advertising background. We have stand-up comedians. We have captains of college debate teams. We try to get a nice mix of people so the advertising feels really fresh and different. We also have a school that we've started inside the agency called the Academy. And the focus there is really to pull kids in who can't afford to go to a traditional advertising school, but have a ton of potential. And there's a kid named Carlos, who's a part of our design group now, who went through this school, whose dad was a sign maker. And so this kid grew up around typography and knew that really well, but he wasn't traditionally trained in all the different programs that we typically use in advertising. So we took him on. The teachers of the school are employees at the agency, and he's just done really, really well. He's just a great example of someone that had the potential and then went through the program and now has a career in advertising.
And it must feel so good. I mean, I'm just looking at you right now and your face truly lights up just even talking about this story. So it must feel so good to know that you're making an impact on somebody's life and completely helping shape the trajectory.
Yeah, it's totally true, and I feel really good about the fact that we're adding diversity to, a career path that typically doesn't have a lot of diversity in it. And we're not only helping our agency with that diversity, but we're also helping the industry.
And your company has a very storied, rich history when it comes to creating some of the best Super Bowl ads that we have seen out there. Talk to me about the biggest trends right now you are seeing in the sports sector and what we can expect for Super Bowl coming up.
Well, it's funny because the Super Bowl is the biggest platform for advertising, right? It's our biggest stage.
Yes.
And the tricky thing about it is that the audience is so varied, right? You're talking to everyone from, toddlers to great-grandparents. So what's worked for us traditionally is just to keep it simple and keep it funny.
And we're also seeing these roles play a huge part when it comes to ad advertising, and these women powerhouses really making a name for themselves. How is it shifting the advertising sector?
What we're seeing from brands is that there's a lot more focus on being a part of women's sports and advertising there, right? They're probably wondering why they didn't focus on that even sooner. Because we're seeing just this rise in viewership and audiences. We know that because for the first time in history, there were more people watching the women's NCAA championship than the men's NCAA championship, which is a big change. Women's sports is estimated to make $1 billion in revenue this year, which is up 300%.
And your app, Lessons in Her Story, it offers a unique way to engage in history, but also from a female perspective, right? So what inspired you to create this sort of platform?
I co-founded a nonprofit several years ago with my daughter, who was 9 years old at the time, and it's called Daughters of the Evolution. And the mission of that nonprofit is to create the world that our girls want to live in. And the first thing that we actually put out into the world was Lessons in Her Story. And that is an augmented reality app Super simple to use. It's an educational piece. You launch the app and you kind of hover over any image in a kid's history book. So think Abraham Lincoln or George Washington. And the app serves up a story and picture of a woman who lived around the same time, who did something equally compelling that you've probably never heard of, who's been omitted from a lot of these history books. And I was asked to come to Cannes and speak about being a female CCO in advertising, and my daughter at the time said, "Mom, that sounds like a talk you've given a lot of times." And I was like, you know what, they'd probably rather hear from you. So I invited my daughter and 4 other CCOs and their daughters to be a part of that panel, which ultimately we turned into a nonprofit.
You know, you've talked a lot about how, you know, just trying new things and not necessarily making everything the same, bringing in new ideas and fresh concepts, right? But what trends do you think will shape the advertising or creative advertising industry most?
The big thing that's just throwing shockwaves through creativity is AI, obviously.
Yes.
I feel lucky that we've embraced AI. We have an exciting exhibit that we just launched at South by Southwest. It's called Ask Dali. So when you walk into the exhibit, there's actually a lobster phone on a podium, and you pick up that receiver and you can ask Dali any question that you want, from your favorite restaurant to his favorite, you know, piece of art in the museum, and he'll answer you back live. Yes, using
so
AI.
cool.
So it's pretty amazing.
Wow. Well, thank you so much for joining me today on Taking Stock.
Awesome. Thanks for having me.